Way back in the spring of 1990, 10-year-old me was given a $5 allowance. In search of something to spend my money on, I came upon something fantastic at my local convenience store newsstand. It was then that I started a lifelong obsession with the gold standard of sequential art, the comic book. Now, as an old man, I have decided to open up some old boxes and dig into my comic book collection. I decided it's time for me to review and analyze the illustrations and artists that made me comics crazy. What's going on, good people? This is Chris Crazy House once again for another episode of Chris Crazy House Presents Comics Crazy, and we are continuing with our review and analysis of the miniseries from the 1990s in the Amazing Spider-Man called The Return of the Sinister Six. And right now we are on part 3. And right here we got the cover for this issue. Okay? And just to let you know, this is your first time here, I will be reviewing this book, and I have the original copy from summer of 1990, as well as the collected version. The collected version has a little bit, some newer colors and stuff like that. It's had a little bit of reprint done on it. So it looks really good, okay, just so you can get a quick glimpse of it. But we'll be going through that version as well, because obviously I've had this book for a long time, and some of the pages are a little faded at this point. And it was also printed on newsprint, so it didn't have the crisp digital colors that became popular after this time. So we're going to be taking a look at it here. Let's check out the cover of part 3 of The Return of the Sinister Six. And in this issue, we're going to get the Vulture. So one of the cooler villains from Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. We got an old man, Adrian Toomes, who has a suit that enhances his strength and also gives him the ability to fly. And of course, he decides to use that to become a thief and an assassin as well. But a really cool villain, someone that I've always enjoyed as part of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. And this is his more original costume. I know it's changed over the years where they've made it more mechanical, but this is more of the original version where it just kind of looks like he's wearing a onesie and actual feather wings that he's wearing here. So we also see that in this issue, someone dies. Okay, so we got a bit of foreshadowing that we're going to lose a certain character in this issue. And I'm not going to spoil it for you just yet, but I mean, if you've been paying attention to the storyline so far in this miniseries in the first 2 episodes, it's pretty obvious who's going to die in this issue. Like, I would be surprised if it wasn't this character, right? And we also got the villain, Chance. Now, Chance is a mercenary who works for people, but he doesn't take money per se. He kind of bets against himself, I think, and he kind of gets his payment based on the bet or the gambling itself, because he's kind of a gambling addict. So that's how he goes and gets his payments for the jobs that he's paid for. So we got both Chance and the Vulture going after Spider-Man in this issue. Very cool cover. Not the best cover in this 6-part miniseries, but a cool cover. I enjoy this cover a lot. And I like the heavy shadows used on both Spider-Man and the person who is supposedly going to die in this issue. Okay, and you got the Vulture and Chance in the background. I probably would not have gone with the pink, but they're probably just really trying to think of a color that would contrast with the Vulture, Chance, and Spider-Man at the same time. So they were probably thinking, just, we got to make sure that the main characters stand out from whatever background we have here. Like, they didn't want to just go with blue. I don't know why, but probably because the logo was blue, but who knows? I don't know the story behind that, but I know that this pink background has everyone stand out. Or maybe they were just going for certain colors on each cover of each issue. So maybe that was it. So we got this here. We're going to open it up this original copy from 1990. And we start with the cool splash page of the Vulture flying right towards us. And he's holding a dummy in his hands with like a little target on its head. And he's saying, "Make way for the Vulture." Very cool splash page. Another splash page that I tried to emulate because I wanted to try to get the body type of the Vulture. So the way his suit is designed, it makes him look more like an actual vulture because they kind of have like that little hump around their midsection, around their back. But a lot of that is the mechanical parts of his suit. So that's why it looks like that. And, you know, like I said, it enhances his strength and everything. Otherwise, he would just be an old criminal who had no way to fight characters like Spider-Man and others without the enhancement of his suit. But you see him flying right towards us. This is kind of classic of what Erik Larsen is good for when it comes to him designing these panels. And we're going to take a quick look in the collected version, just so you folks can see how it looks here. Very cool panel, and that green really pops out here. And we got another cameo by another popular Marvel villain, especially within the Spider-Man universe. We got the Kingpin sitting there looking very dapper in his suits as always. And they're looking to get rid of somebody, and they're paying the Vulture to do it. Okay, the Vulture is going to be their hitman in this case, and the Kingpin hired the Vulture personally. And one of his other mob guys is kind of sitting there watching as the Vulture is testing out his new suit on this dummy. So what Vulture is planning to do is, you know, grab a person and basically fly them at high speed into a rock and splat. And what we get is a really cool panel of the Vulture showing the end result of what will happen to someone if they hit this rock at high velocity. All that's left is their hands and wrists. So that's what he did to the dummy, and that's what he's going to do to this person named Trask, who the Kingpin is hiring the Vulture to assassinate. But a very cool introduction for the Vulture. So this is good to do this every once in a while when you have a villain or any type of character reappear that maybe the audience has not seen in a while. You want to showcase what powers they have and how dangerous they are. And they do a great job of doing this with the Vulture. I really enjoy this panel right here. I like the way this looks because it gives you a good full body shot, especially with the wings. So if you ever wanted to draw the Vulture, this is a good way to see how he looks in all his glory. You get a good close-up of him on the first splash page. So if you're an artist that's so inclined to use these books as a way to learn how to draw certain characters, you could use this just to get his head and maybe the neckline around him. And you could use this to get how his full body looks. So just a tip there if you're a young artist who wants to learn from the comic books and the manga that you collect. Sometimes you want to make sure you have a full body version of the character that you can draw and practice with. Obviously, you should take some anatomy classes or learn about real anatomy before you want to enhance it with these comic books. But, you know, nothing wrong with learning how to do artwork by studying the greats in the comic book industry. Nothing wrong with that at all. So we turn to the next page and we got Spider-Man kind of swinging over this bridge here. And obvious, this is cut out. This is not drawn by anybody. It looks like it was cut out from an actual picture. So they might have had a picture from like a helicopter view and they cut it out and put it in this book and kind of cut it and paste it within this panel and has Spider-Man kind of swinging over it. Once again, sometimes it takes a lot to get these comic books done every month. And once again, this book was being done twice a month. So you do whatever you can to get it done. And if there's a complicated shot where there's a real building being used or a real bridge being used, you might want to just go ahead and take a photograph. American artists do it. Manga artists do it all the time. Some of my favorite manga artists of all time have done this, where they just take real pictures of certain monuments and, you know, either just draw over it or maybe rasterize it. At this time, it was probably a little bit more complicated to do this because it was done by hand. But back nowadays, it's real easy to do. you can easily do this with the computer and just cut it out yourself with Photoshop or whatever photo program you want to use. And I wanted to kind of show you how it looks here, just so you know for positive that it's actually a photo that's been ripped and it's not, someone did not draw this, okay? But still works, still does a good job. This part down here looks like it has been drawn. Once again, it doesn't blend in as well as it should, but I understand what they were doing and trying to work with the time constraints. You still got a cool figure that kind of distracts you from that. So you're still getting some fun out of this image right here. But Spider-Man swinging around, he's worried about Aunt May and just how she's been worried about her boyfriend Nathan and all the issues that he's been having. And the thing is, Peter Parker's actually worried that Nathan might have gotten himself into something. Like he's worried that, you know, because Nathan wants to be able to leave Aunt May some money, that he might be doing something that is actually illegal and getting Aunt May into some trouble and getting Aunt May hurt. So Peter does not want to see that. And I remember this panel from even when I was a kid and looking at it, it looks like Peter's actually about to cry. Like I'm not sure if he's supposed to be angry, upset, or both. But he definitely looks hurt in this panel. And I remember this very well looking at it as a kid, because I would always thumb through my comic books before I actually read them, just to kind of look at the visuals of it. And once again, like even here, like his face looks a little bit more red. It looks like he's about to cry. And like even like here, where the coloring is done here, it looks like his eyes are welling up, like he's about to cry. Doesn't really fit so much with the dialogue, but you know, maybe he's angry and hurt. I don't know, but a very interesting panel. It's very well done, but I don't think it gets the message across. I think he's supposed to be more upset with Nathan and confronting him, not like he's about to cry. So we come to the part where we introduce Chance, and we remember the other mobster, the big lip dude that was hanging out with the Kingpin. He wants to make sure that this job is done right, that this person that they're having taken out is done correctly. He doesn't trust using the Vulture on this job, so he goes to hire Chance, and he wants to make sure that this is done right. So Chance decides to take the job. Obviously, he does not take money per se, but it's all about the gamble. It's all about the, you know, taking a risk. That's what he's all about. So he decides to go along and do it. And I'm not sure who created this character. Someone would have to tell me if this was a character created by Todd McFarlane, because I remember him when Todd McFarlane was doing his original run here on Amazing Spider-Man. So I'm not sure if it was him or maybe it was Michelini who created the character. You would have to tell me and let me know in the comments section if you know who created this character. But we got Nathan again, not doing very well at all. He's sick. Aunt May is worried about him. And Nathan has actually made plans, and he's tied into this whole situation with Chance as far as gambling against the death of Trask. Okay, so Nathan put his money on there because he knows if he wins, he'll have some extra money to put together for Aunt May. And I wanted to make sure I draw attention to this next page because we got some Mary Jane cheesecake. So we got some Mary Jane fan service. The first appearance of her in this book is fan service. Got her bent over in the cab. I guess she's giving Peter Parker a kiss. But you see her bent over there with the Daisy Dukes on. And she's showing the yams to everybody. So we'll definitely look at that in this collected version. And I know there's some people out there groaning and complaining about these types of images in comic books, but we have to remember we were all young boys at one time, so we appreciated stuff like this as well. It wasn't just the action fantasy. There was a lot of young boy fantasy put into these comic books because we were that major demographic, okay? I don't really see anything wrong with it as long as it's not too explicit. And, you know, that's just what young boys like to see back then. I know nowadays it seems a lot of boys are not into stuff like that. So they keep the comic books very on point. No action, no cheesecake, no nothing. But that's what we had back in the 90s, okay? And Peter Parker's kind of feeling good about this, and he's going to go do a story where he's taking pictures of Raymond Trask's new ship. So this is the guy that's going to be have his life attempted on, and Peter Parker's going to go take some pictures in the meantime. Hey guys, if you're someone who likes comics, I got something for you. I got my own comics. Nukkull-Headz. Nukkull-Headz number 1, Nukkull-Headz number 2, and Nukkull-Headz number 3. Okay? So Chris Crazy House does not just do commentary on nostalgic comics. I also make comics. Okay? And these are 3 of my original ones right here. Nukkull-Headz number 1, 2, and 3 that you can buy at my online store. Nukkull-Headz is a story of a little girl named Angie as she goes on an adventure with this pirate group called the Nukkull-Headz as they try to save the land of Dream from the evil realm of Nightmare. Okay, so fun action adventure story. It does center around kids, but you know, it's for the kids out there that like comic books, but also if you're a child at heart, you will enjoy the story. It's a very fun adventure, and you can go get those now at my online store, and I will autograph these books and send them directly to you. So back to the review. So here we come to probably one of the strangest cameos that we have in this Return of the Sinister Six, and no pun intended, but we actually have Doctor Strange here. Okay, Doctor Strange has actually materialized over the audience, and he really has nothing to do with the story. Like a lot of the cameos that you see in here in this part of Spider-Man in this mini-series, they really don't have anything to do with the story. They just kind of show up and then they leave. It's almost like just to have some fun with drawing different characters. And we got another Steve Ditko creation of Doctor Strange astral projecting over the crowd here, and Spider-Man's spider senses actually go off a little bit, and he's wondering like, where is that coming from? But really it was just Doctor Strange, and then Doctor Strange kind of just flies off. And this is the last we see of him. Okay, he doesn't really have any type of purpose here other than it's a cool image of Doctor Strange to see in this comic book. So we see the rich dude, the CEO, Raymond Trask, introducing his boat, his new yacht, and of course he starts getting attacked by the Vulture. Vulture's throwing bombs down on him, trying to kill him, trying to get his paycheck from the Kingpin, knocking down the guards, and right before he can grab Trask by the face, that's when Spider-Man shows up, webs his hand, and we see Spider-Man jumping into the action. Very cool panel, Spider-Man coming right at you. He fits in there well, but he's also kind of busting out of the panel. And we see the Vulture is upset by that, obviously, because once again, these villains have fought Spider-Man probably 1,000,000 times. They're tired of seeing him by now, and now he's getting in the way of the Vulture making some money. So really cool thin panels here that Erik Larsen loves to do with his action sequences. And there's a good reasoning behind this, where the Vulture is flying straight up into the air. That's something that he normally does when Spider-Man gets a hold of him as a way to kind of shake Spider-Man off. But this time Spider-Man's ready for that. He's like, you know what? This fool always flies straight into the air every time I grab him with a web. So let me figure out. He uses his strength and agility to pull back and fly around and get over top of the Vulture. So he actually gets to a higher elevation than where the Vulture is. And this is the first of the Return of the Sinister Six special splash pages. Okay, and what do I mean by that? When Stan Lee and Steve Ditko did the original annual that featured the Sinister Six, Steve Ditko actually drew 6 different splash pages of Spider-Man fighting each member of the Sinister Six. Okay, so Erik Larsen, when they did the Return of the Sinister Six, they wanted to do the same thing. So Erik Larsen starts doing these big splash pages, starting with this book. And throughout the rest of the series, we're going to see another splash page of Spider-Man fighting each member of the Sinister Six. And this is the first of them. This is a cool one, by the way, of Spider-Man swinging over the Vulture and the Vulture being surprised by the way Spider-Man has done this to him by using his web to kind of swing around on him. Very cool splash page. I want to take a look at that in the original book here, because I didn't know about the history of this when I first bought this comic, but I still enjoyed the heck out of it. Obviously, as a artist, a budding artist and a comic book fan, this was everything. I enjoy stuff like this, and having a whole full splash page like this, very well done. Very well done. And we're going to see the other splash pages as we go on, because they get cooler and cooler as time goes on in this story. So Spider-Man is able to loop around, and he winds up pulling the Vulture downward with his web. And the Vulture winds up going down as Spider-Man kind of hooks onto a building. And Vulture winds up hitting the ground. Luckily, he didn't hit anybody that was in the crowd. No soon as Spider-Man is dealing with the Vulture, that's when Chance shows up. And the security guards and the police that are there are already shooting at Chance. And Chance is taking shots at Spider-Man. Always love stuff like this. So we saw this earlier when Spider-Man was evading the tentacles of Dr. Octopus. Now we get to see him avoiding the lasers of Chance. And you see, because he has his spider senses, he's able to maneuver through these blasts, these laser blasts, and not get hit. And Spider-Man winds up webbing his hands like he did before, but that doesn't seem to work this time, because Chance uses the lasers to melt Spider-Man's webs. Once again, a cool introduction of Chance here, even though, to be honest, he's kind of a lame villain, but they found a way to stick him in here. I'm going to showcase the collected version so we can see it here of Chance showing up. I've never really been a fan of this villain. That's why I don't think a lot of people like him. That's why you don't really see him as much. He's not one of the villains slash anti-heroes that really lasted in the Marvel Universe. But Spider-Man moves out of the way of the lasers, and Spider-Man winds up webbing him in his face, basically. And that causes Chance to crash into a water tower. And Chance feels like, well, I guess I'm not going to get paid this time. Let me get out of here. My freedom is more important. Let me zoom out of here and get these webs off my face. Goodbye, 100 grand. So he knows he's not going to make any money off of this hit. And right here, we got a real sinister face of the Vulture, and he's saying her. Vulture has spotted a hostage that he can take in order for him to get away from Spider-Man. And he's going to take Aunt May. He sees that there's an old defenseless lady. That's the perfect hostage he can take. And he tries to grab her, but Nathan steps in. Even though Nathan's in a wheelchair, Nathan has a health condition, he steps in and grabs on to the Vulture. And Vulture takes off right into the air with Nathan holding on to him. And Nathan even realizes that at this point, he's way too high up. He's not going to make it. Okay, so let's take a look at here, because I see the lighting is starting to change outside. Let's see if we can see it better here, of Nathan realizing just how high he is in the sky and how he's not going to make it. And he winds up falling. This is actually very well done. Now, sometimes when you want to showcase certain things like this, it's actually pretty good to see just how lonely or just how high or whatever a character is. And we can see how the Vulture's going high into the air and Nathan is falling out of the sky. And he's clutching his chest, so that means he's actually having a heart attack from falling it from this height. Now, Spider-Man sees this and goes to save him, and he kind of shoots his web and grabs him by the foot. Now, you would think at this point Peter Parker will realize this is probably not the best way to save somebody from falling, especially after what happened to Gwen Stacy, but he does it anyway, and Nathan doesn't die necessarily from being caught, but he's already in the midst of a heart attack. And that's when the Vulture, he's trying to fly off and get away, and all these helicopters, police and military and everyone else has showed up. but Dr. Octopus comes to rescue him. So at this time, Dr. Octopus, this is one of the few times where he didn't set this thing up like he did with Mysterio, but he's showing up, and just like with Electro, he offers to get the Vulture out of this place as long as he joins up with him. And Vulture says, I'm gonna do it. To hell with it. Better than going back to prison. And Vulture gets away, and Spider-Man looks down and sees that everything is not okay with Aunt May and her boyfriend Nathan. And we see at this point, Nathan basically is dying in her arms. So Nathan is the one that they showed on the cover that was dying. And I don't know how you would not know this, but if you've been paying attention to the story about his health condition and how he was doing and the situations he was getting himself into, he actually winds up dying, and he's the character that dies. So it was pretty obvious to me, but once again, I'm familiar with comic books and whatnot, so I knew it could only be this character. If it wasn't him, I would be surprised. But very somber story. It almost kind of looks a little bit like when Gwen Stacy died, or when her father, Captain Stacy, died in Spider-Man's arms. So very reminiscent of that, but very well done. You get to see their last moments, and at least Nathan and Aunt May get to say goodbye to each other. But, you know, it just basically says that even heroes can't win, okay? They don't always, they might save the day for some people, but not for everybody. Always a good lesson to have with these comics. So that is the end of part 3 of the Return of the Sinister Six. And at this point, the squad is all together now. All 6 members of the Sinister Six are now together, and now they're going to start causing some serious trouble for Spider-Man. And we're going to be looking at the next issue, and we're going to have to use the collected version because I do not have the original version. How I missed it, I have no idea. We'll talk about that, though, in the next episode of Comics Crazy. But just to give you folks a preview of the cover here, very cool cover of, you know, the Sinister Six and looking down on a miniature Spider-Man. So obviously this is not this is not literally what happens, but this is a cool way of showcasing these villains towering over our hero. Very cool cover. We'll talk about that more when we get to it. If you enjoyed this episode of Chris Crazy House Presents Comics Crazy, and you enjoy seeing me review these classic comic books like The Return of the Sinister Six and The Amazing Spider-Man, go ahead and like this video. I very much appreciate it. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to this channel so that way you can find out the next time I am here when I upload any new videos about comic books or any of my art videos. And you can always check the links in the description box as well as the comments section if you want to purchase any of my products like my own comics or my coloring books or stickers or posters. Okay? So thank you all for showing up, and I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we will see you here next time when we do part 4 of the Return of the Sinister Six. And this is Chris Crazy House, and I want to thank you for all showing up to Comics Crazy, and I'll see you next time. Anyway, Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.